When I saw this video, it really spoke to me. The title is Europe Ruined America for Me. I had not left the United States until the beginning of 2023. If you can believe that. I was born in 1972. So that tells you something right there. I was in the United States for a long time and fed all of the stuff that you are fed over the years. And then I came to Europe and I was like, oh my God, this place is amazing. So I'm excited to check this video out here today. Before we do that, go ahead and like the video. That really helps a lot. And I'm going to include a link in the description for this channel, which is Joe Baur. That way you can head on over, subscribe to his channel. I'm sure he would appreciate that. All right, here we go. Let's see what we can see.
I didn't care much for pineapple when I was a kid. I thought it was bland in the grand scheme of fruits. Okay. But then I had a pineapple in Costa Rica where they actually grow it, and my lord, nothing is better. Now the canned stuff you see lopped onto a hotel breakfast buffet practically makes me gag. And that, sports fans, is what living in Europe for 10 years did to America for me. Yep. Let me explain. If you're new here, hey, thanks for being here. Swell of ya. My name is Joe Baur, an American immigrant who's been living in Europe for the past decade and wandering around the world even longer.
I like that, American immigrant, because a lot of times people say expat to make it sound all fancy, but I'm an immigrant living here in Spain. So, and I'm okay with that. And that actually kind of enlightened me on what immigrants go through around the world once I became one. So,
an immigrant who's been living in Europe for the past decade and wandering around the world even longer, trying to close the gap between the story we're told and what's actually out there. Oh, in this video, I'm going to share how living in Europe has ruined the United States for me.
Man, that is a strong statement, but it's true. People don't like to hear it. I still got family and friends in the U.S. and I was already feeling some kind of way about the U.S. before we got out of there. But once I came here, I never want to go back. I'll do everything I can not to go back there.
Growing up in the U.S., particularly,
and I'm sure he's going to touch on some of those reasons,
to leave the so-called heartland of America, the constant thumping of best country ever, either verbally or subconsciously by our politicians and media, leave you assuming that the sentiment must be true. Yeah, it's ingrained in you before you can even conceive of life beyond U.S. borders. So that's what I assumed. The U.S. must be the best country because, you know, it just is. The tides go in and out, the earth rotates around the sun, and the Cleveland Browns will find new and unique ways to lose games. It's just another law of the universe. Now, to be fair, you don't know what you don't know. We're not generally taught that many people who live outside of the United States are happy with where they live.
Yeah, I know, it's super weird. You know, I've been pretty fortunate. I've been here in Spain going on 3 years now. So it's not completely new to me. I've met a lot of people who tell me how they think about the U.S. and how people in the U.S. think that they're superior to everyone around the world. But I'm telling you right now, it is a true thing. I can call some people I know right now in my family and give them reasons why it's better, and they still won't believe it. Like, they'll just think that, you know, it's like, I don't know what I'm talking about, and they've never even been out of the country. It's crazy.
Taught that many people who live outside of the United States are happy with where they live. The general narrative we get is that everyone wants to come to the US. We saw that presumptuous bravado play out with the latest Greenland nonsense when Ted Cruz claimed Greenlanders would say, hell yeah, to becoming American citizens. Except they don't want to become American citizens, which is something I'll dive deeper into my next video covering my recent week traveling around Greenland. So, you know, stay tuned. It wasn't until I started traveling the world, ironically thanks to the privilege of an American passport, that I started to realize both that best country is highly subjective and that other countries inarguably do certain things better. In some cases, much better.
Yeah, it's really, I think the best country, like he said, is all relative. You know, where I am in my life right now, I don't need, you know, to be making $200,000. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll take it. But, you know, I don't need to work 70 hours a week and do all of those things, you know, or I don't need to have the luxury of going to a football game, the National Football League, or, those kind of things where those are the types of things that people say make America great. So, but for me, it's more about being able to go to the cafe with my wife for 2 hours and not do nothing except talk about life. Those things are what matter to me. So, and I could do all that here in Spain for about €5. So there.
I remember traveling to Switzerland for the first time about 12 years ago, crisscrossing the country by bike and train, something you simply cannot do in the US. Or, for the person inevitably getting ready to yell in the comments, Switzerland is the size of a small US state. You can't do it in a small US state either. There's a bit from How I Met Your Mother, one of the few that haven't aged horribly, where glass shatters every time someone realizes something for the first time.
You're always correcting people.
That's absolutely right.
That trip to Switzerland was the first of many glass-shattering moments from Europe that's ruined America for me.
Yeah.
Moving here and traveling even more has only made it worse. Now, when I lived in Dusseldorf, I could easily and safely cycle to the Netherlands, take regional trains to villages in the countryside, ride a high-speed train to France or Belgium, a night train to Vienna, or transfer in Munich to slip south to Austria or Italy. Even from Berlin, I can easily get to Denmark, Czechia, Hungary, or within about an hour on the train, Poland.
Wow, that's just so amazing. I haven't been fortunate enough yet to travel all over Europe. We don't have a car, and so I can travel around, obviously around where in Spain without having a vehicle. So that part is great. But I do have the ability. It's more likely that I'm going to be able to go to all of these places that he's mentioning than it was if I lived over in the U.S. Because for me to get from here to, say, Manchester, I think it's about round trip €250, something like that. Where, and if I could go back, and actually I talked to a friend of mine who was traveling from, I believe it was Florida to somewhere in the Midwest, and it was like $1,600 to go within the United States. That's crazy. So, I mean, they can come here to Europe for less than that.
Isn't just great for travel, it's great for flexibility when working remotely. Just last week, I took the train from Copenhagen to Berlin after my week in Greenland because my flight was canceled. In the US, I'd be absolutely screwed. I'd have to rent a car and basically lose a workday driving. But here, I could just hop on the train. It was about an 8.5-hour journey. Basically a workday on the train, which, as a side note, I'm wildly productive on a train. I think I wrapped up like 3 articles I had due for editors, and it really would have screwed up my week if I lost that time. Not to mention, spending that amount of time in a car would push me to the brink of insanity. After having that kind of ease of connectivity for the past decade, I simply can't look at the US the same way again.
Wow.
Because all I see when I look at a map are the ghosts of train lines that used to exist and think of the decades of missed opportunities to make things better.
It's this way around the world, but in the US specifically, I do know that it has a lot to do with politics. I lived in Las Vegas, actually grew up there, and there has been talk for years about building a train line that goes from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, which, it's probably about a 3.5-hour drive. You can take a bus there or a plane. That's really it. They wanted to build a high-speed train railway, but one party says that that's a waste of money. The other party, wants to build it because it's more efficient, but it's all politics. A lot of things over there is one of the reasons they don't have, great transportation. So, because they don't want anything that the government controls the entire system, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. I think it'd be better for the people living there if there was some type of public transportation that could get you across the country and not just, in a certain city like San Francisco or Chicago or New York, where they have, public transportation is a little more efficient there, or at least better than somewhere else, like maybe LA or something.
Case in point, we're planning a big trip around the western United States to check out some national parks, most likely connecting Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, Boise, and Portland. They're the largest cities in their respective states, each about 4 to 6 hours of driving apart. My European eyes can't help but expect there to be trains connecting these places. Here, I can take a high-speed train from Berlin to Munich, the same distance as Salt Lake City to Boise, in about 4 hours, with Wi-Fi while working. What transit options that do exist in the western region of the US are multiple buses that just about double the driving time. Hardly the stuff of the best country on earth.
And the multiple buses are like Greyhound. And don't get me wrong, I've taken Greyhound a few times in my life, but it's not necessarily the safest or cleanest. You know, I don't know. Or you can pay for some charter bus or something like that, but that's really it, which is unbelievable. Like here in Spain, we can get up in the morning, take a train from Granada to Malaga. It might take about an hour. We can spend the day there, and it might be like 30 euros or something like that. We can keep going. We can go from, Malaga to Madrid in about 3.5 hours. And I can make it all the way to France on a train and, further up. I don't know the details because I haven't done it. I've looked it up a few times, but I know I can take a train all over Europe. Uh-oh, here we go.
The US is, financially speaking, a wealthy country. Now, rather than using $200 billion to fund an illegal war, it could give a tiny fraction of that amount to improving the lives of everyday Americans by, I don't know, as just one example, improving transportation alternatives.
Yeah.
But what it can't do is something that's inherent to the very fabric of Europe, and that is hold together a mosaic of different languages, cultures, and histories. One of my absolute favorite things about living in and traveling around Europe is the linguistic and cultural diversity of the continent. When I'm doing those cycling trips from Dusseldorf or the international train trips out of Berlin, I'm diving into a place with a completely different language, culture, and history.
I think that's so great. You can't really do that in the United States. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's people from all over who come to the United States from all over the world. But again, it's something political. If you ask somebody in the United States, they'll say that the national language is English. And if anyone is taught anything different or wants to speak anything different, they're looked at as like not grateful to the United States. Like my wife, she has Mexican descent, I guess is how you could say it. And, back in the 70s, it was not cool to teach people Spanish. And so even though our parents knew it, right now today, we're both trying to learn. So they never taught her because you didn't want to be seen as like an immigrant. So that's kind of, I think that's cool. What he's saying is that they hold to, now granted, they are looking at, it's different countries. So it's probably a little bit easier to hold together your language and culture and everything. But even within certain countries, like in Spain, there's like so many different, I can go in the south of Spain and then go up to Barcelona, and it's like two different languages. So that will not happen in the US, I can tell you that.
That was another glass-shattering moment for me. Just how much I value this kind of accessible diversity. Now, don't get me wrong, the US is home to loads of unique and interesting cultures. The Midwest is different than the Northeast, which is different than the Southeast, and so on. But the degree of those differences is a fraction of what you experience living in Europe. Going from my hometown of Cleveland to, let's say, next door Pennsylvania just isn't as thrilling as going to Poland from Berlin. And it simply never will be. No offense to Pennsylvania. I love Pittsburgh, the Allegheny River, the Allegheny Mountains. It's all beautiful stuff, so please don't attack me with one of those massive Primanti Brothers sandwiches. My love and now expectation for that kind of diversity is 100% Europe's fault, and there's nothing the US can do about that. Unless, and I'm just spitballing here, someone invents a time machine, goes back in time, stops Native American genocide. Those civilizations continue to grow. They allow a reasonable amount of European immigration, but with limits, of course, because you can't just have them pouring across Cherokee, Navajo, or Choctaw borders taking their jobs. And then you're left with the same kind of cultural mosaic that we have today in Europe. And instead of, dances with wolves, we'd have, I don't know, dances with clogs or something. If only.
If only. Oh, God.
In the US, unemployment is viewed shamefully. It's one of the sins spelled out on Mel Brooks' third tablet that his Moses dropped. There's little empathy for folks who, for one reason or another, can't find work. Boomers especially are fond of shaking their head, muttering, Why don't you just get a job? As if they're just being handed out by the job fairy.
Yeah, get a job. Oh, get a job? Yeah. Just get a job? Why don't I strap on my job helmet and squeeze down into a job cannon and fire off into job land where jobs grow on jobbies?
In Germany, and I imagine most of the European Union, unemployment is viewed differently. We have higher taxes, yes, but that helps fund the social safety net that gives recently unemployed folks financial breathing room if they lose their job. Or it's not entirely uncommon for someone to voluntarily leave their job just to make some time for themselves, maybe travel, or do something else that doesn't revolve around work. All the while collecting some.
That's interesting. I'd be curious to know what you have to say about this. I do know here in Spain, like the unemployment rate is really high. A lot of young people end up leaving Spain because they, the opportunity for jobs is not as high. I know a few people that their sons wanted to go, their children wanted to go to the U.S. because they could have some kind of job there. But I'm curious to know, it's interesting what he's saying, that some people choose unemployment. Well, I mean, I guess people do in the U.S. too. They quit their jobs, but then they are like stuck with no income, or I don't know. I'm just curious to know what you have to say about that.
Form of unemployment. The American mind couldn't imagine such a thing.
No.
I couldn't have imagined it myself until I lived here. But in Germany, unemployment is viewed as a kind of insurance policy that you recoup whenever you need it. It's your money you're taking back. But in the US, a social safety net is the kind of thing for commies and their commie polyamorous thruples. In a country where many people are living paycheck to paycheck, leaving your job for any number of reasons is seen as too risky. So you might find yourself trapped as opposed to feeling free to explore other opportunities or maybe even starting your own business. Glass officially shattered.
Uh-oh, here we go. They lied.
None of this is to say that Europe is better than the United States. That kind of thinking is entirely subjective, whether you truly believe the United States is the greatest country on earth, or you wouldn't step foot there if someone paid you. But these glass-shattering moments that living in and traveling around Europe has given me has changed how I see the United States as it relates to the rest of the world. It gave me perspective.
Yeah.
It showed me that the American way isn't the best way, it's just one way. It also sucks, to be honest, because as an American, you feel like someone lied to you when the glass shatters, and you realize that other places are doing certain things better, or at least more effectively. But because so many of our leaders believe that America is the best country on earth, they refuse to learn from other places. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind a little confident bravado every now and then. It works for some of the best athletes out there, but you gotta back that shit up. Imagine if after Muhammad Ali said he was the greatest, he went out there and got pummeled by a 5th grader with weak bones. Perhaps most frustrating of all, US leadership by and large would seem more likely to just give me a Men in Black brain wipe rather than try and make itself better.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, look right here.
The US is the greatest country on earth. Kid Rock is a national icon. Tex-Mex is better than Mexican. So yes, Europe ruined America for me. Living and traveling around here showed me that the US isn't the best in many respects, certainly in ways I care about. I can't unsee that, and I certainly can't imagine life without it. But Europe isn't the only region dropping life lessons on my lap. In this video, I share 8 places.
Wow. I mean, there have been several glass-shattering moments for me. One of them is pretty trivial, but I remember the very first time we came here. You might think this is weird, but the escalators, like, Lisa makes fun of me all the time, but that's my wife, by the way. Here in Europe, when we first got, I think it was in the UK, was the first place we landed. It had there was about 5 steps that were flat. So you could just walk on, and then it went down on the escalator. I know that's weird, but that was like a shattering thing for me. It's like, why can't America think of this? And then I remember being at a parade here in Spain, and a little kid had a toy gun. It didn't have an orange tip on it or anything like that. And everybody wasn't freaking out. And I know that in the US, it's like, you cannot have a toy gun, even if you're a little kid. You better have an orange tip on it or something so people know that it's not real or something like that. And I just remember feeling in that crowd of people that I didn't have to worry about getting shot. Like, I don't know. Everybody doesn't think that way in the US, but I do. I know my wife does. And people might think I'm just over exaggerating, but that was a real thing. And even if I go back, it's a real thing because it was happening everywhere. And then, and then I would say that the other thing that I think is super cool is that children here in Spain, at least, are accepted like everywhere. Like you can go to a bar and, there can be a kids playground where like right outside the bar, and they let kids run around. They make noise, they play. And in the US, I know that you do not, like if a kid is running around, like they get yelled at, or the parents will be looked down on by everybody. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many things, but that's just kind of 3 of the things. But I think this is a great video, a lot to touch on there. And I'd be super curious to know if there's anyone out there who's from the US, if you've had any shattering moments where, Europe basically ruined America for you. And if there's anybody who's not an American, and what are your thoughts on the good old US of A? All right, before we get out of here, go ahead and like the video. That really helps a lot. We'll catch you on the next video. Peace.